Everyone, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue with day 5 of writing a cause and effect essay. This is aimed at our young learners, but this can also be used with middle school or intermediate level writers. So, we are going to talk today about the peer review process. And we're going to walk through that with a mentor text and also with students' own writing. They're going to have a chance to break out and to pair and share. So, what I like to do when I'm teaching my academic writing lessons, whether I'm teaching them to young learners or to university students, is I combine direct instruction in the rhetorical features of an academic essay along with a process writing approach. I think it's really important that we combine the two of them. And when we're working with young learners, we want to be sure that we're using student-friendly language. So I want to focus in day 5 on everything that we've accomplished together as a class, working to write our cause and effect essays. But I also want to focus on the fact that we can always improve. So I always teach my students when we're going through the publishing process, just remember that you're not done. As writers, we're never really done. We can always go back and revisit a text, but we do want to get it to a point where we're able to publish it. And whatever that means, whether we're actually publishing it in the school newspaper or we're simply presenting it to our teachers. So I want to review what a cause and effect essay is. Well, we know it's written about one topic that can either focus on causes or effects. For our essay, remember we said we're going to be focusing on effects, and I paired this with a lesson on rules and laws. Now, this can be laws across society, maybe that are applicable in your neighborhood, or they could be rules that you have in your school community or in your classroom. We're going to tell our audience the topic of our essay and the thesis statement, and we're going to do this in our introduction. Every body paragraph is going to represent one big idea. That's either one cause or one effect. In our case, we're writing about one effect in each body paragraph. Our body paragraphs need to have supporting details. So the main cause or main effect that we're addressing in each body paragraph, that's going to be communicated in the topic sentence. And then we're going to give more information about that with supporting details. And finally, we want to end with a conclusion. And we're going to review what each of these parts should have in detail. So our good beginning, what does this include? Well, we want to hook the reader, and we've talked about this really since we've started with our first and second grade writing. We want to draw our reader in. We want to get the audience's attention. We're going to introduce the topic. In this case, we're talking about the effects of having no rules or having no laws. We're going to give the reader a roadmap. With my older students, I call this a thesis map. With my younger students, I tend to use the word roadmap, but I think either or, it's interchangeable. The idea is that when we've got a map, we know where we're going, right? We want our reader to know where they're going when they read our essay. So that's that one sentence that highlights the 3 big ideas that you're going to be sharing in those body paragraphs. And finally, we're going to communicate our thesis statement to our reader, and that should be the last sentence of our introduction. Okay, then when we get to the body paragraphs, remember each body paragraph represents one big idea. And in our case, we're talking about one effect of a world without rules. Now, this could be again, a society without laws, or it could be our classroom. I found most of my students tend to want to write about school-wide rules because I think it's easier for them to relate to. But again, it depends on the level of students that you're working with. What else do we want to include in each body paragraph? Well, we're going to communicate that big idea in the first sentence. That's our topic sentence. Then we're going to want to include lots of details, facts, or evidence to further develop that idea. And then finally, our conclusion or our ending. We want to signal the end of our writing, whether it's in conclusion, to sum up, finally. We want our reader to know that they've gotten to the end of our essay. We're going to restate our thesis. I would prefer it if students did this in different words, but sometimes, especially when we're dealing with writers who are really striving to improve, sometimes it's simpler for them just to restate that thesis. And I actually like this when I'm working with emerging writers because what it shows them is it shows them a visual movement of that thesis from the introduction to the conclusion. So it's actually like moving those rhetorical features from one part of the essay to the other. And they really get a grasp of tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them, which is really the foundation for our academic essay. We're going to summarize those three effects. So again, that's kind of like restating our roadmap almost, or our thesis map. And again, hopefully we can use different words to do this, but if we can't, that's okay too. And then we have that opportunity to be creative where we share a final thought. Remember, we're sharing a final thought, but we're not introducing new information. So we want to get better as writers. So what I've just gone over there, that's that focus on the rhetorical features of the academic essay. Now we're going to move more to the process writing approach. So when we revise our work, we're checking to see what we can add, what we can take out, what we can change. So this is the concept of revision versus editing. Whereas when we're editing our work, we want to make sure everything's perfect. Spelling, grammar, punctuation. And this is important for me and for my students, the way I teach. When we're drafting, I want to get those ideas out, right? Just get those ideas out, get them down on paper. I don't care if it's spelled wrong. I don't care if you forgot to use capital letters. I don't care about punctuation. I want your ideas on paper. Now, it doesn't mean I don't care about spelling, grammar, and punctuation. It just means I don't care about it now. I don't care about it yet. When we get to the end of the essay, or to the end of the writing process, we're going to go back and we're going to fix that. And that's what we're going to do now. So when we're reviewing our work, we can improve, but having a second set of eyes is really helpful. So we're going to introduce our students to this concept of peer editing and, most importantly, to constructive criticism. We have to set a purpose for our kids. They have to understand that this is about getting better. It's not about finding things to criticize your classmate or your peers and make them feel bad. We want to be polite, but we want to help them to improve. So let's look at some examples here. The second paragraph is unclear and stupid. I don't even know what you're saying. Obviously, this is not constructive. We're just saying mean things about our classmates. The second paragraph doesn't have enough detail. I would add this to make it better. So that second example is definitely going to help us improve. It's a better example of what constructive criticism looks like. And don't just say great job. That's something else I really try to impress upon my students. We don't want this to be a backslapping exercise. We don't want to be rude, but we also don't want to just say, hey, good job, and move the person along. We want to give them some advice to help them get better. So we're going to have our students go back to their seats to work through a peer review checklist. But before they do that, what I usually do is I show them how we can do this. And I'll take a mentor text. Sometimes I'll create a mentor text that has got some flaws that needs to be corrected. Generative AI is great for this because generative AI actually produces a lot of text that's far from perfect. So you can, if you're on the spot in the classroom, you can pull something up and then you can work through it. So I'll go through each phase. Okay, let's work through this together as a class. Does the first sentence get my attention? Yes or no? And usually, especially if you're using something that was generated by Claude or ChatGPT, the answer is usually no. So your students can add some comments, use a powerful statement, or consider asking the audience a question. Is the topic clearly introduced? Is there a roadmap? Does the writer clearly communicate a thesis in the last sentence? And remember, we've got these ideas. If the first sentence is not drawing the reader in, well, how can we do that? We can ask a question, we can present an interesting fact or a strong statement, or we can use a quotation. Remember, if you're using a quotation, you have to take an extra sentence after that hook to explain that quotation, to interpret it for your audience. The body paragraphs. The first paragraph tells me one effect of having no rules. Okay, yes or no. The second paragraph tells me one effect. The third paragraph tells me one effect. And each paragraph has at least 3 sentences that add detail. So what I would do here as I'm working through this, and again, this is aimed at younger learners, but what I would do is the first paragraph tells me one effect of having no rules. Okay, yeah, that's correct. It does. So we're gonna go ahead here and click yes. But maybe it doesn't do it in the first sentence. So I might say something like, add a topic sentence that shares the big idea in the first sentence of the paragraph. Okay, so that right there, even though the answer is yes, we can still add comments to help our partner to get better. Okay. And finally, our conclusion. The conclusion signals the end of the report. The writer uses different words to retell the thesis. The writer summarizes 3 effects, and the writer leaves the reader with a final thought. Okay, and remember, we're going to talk about editing for spelling, grammar, and punctuation, so we can make some comments as well on our peer review sheet. Hey, really great use of capitalization. Be mindful of your punctuation. So then I'm going to send my students back to their seats, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to work through this peer review checklist here. And I've got that here. And you can see when you look at this, this has got all of these different characteristics or different criteria that we just went over in the PowerPoint. Students are going to have that in their own peer review worksheet. And they've got a space for comments. Usually what I do is I try and model constructive criticism, because I think this is something students need a lot of practice with. They go in with the mindset that if I'm criticizing my classmate, I'm being mean. And we want to teach them that that's not the case. One thing that I like to do is I'll present something, I'll say, who can help me? And I'll say, hey, that's really great advice. Thank you for helping me to get better. So we model how to handle constructive criticism as well as how to give it. Then after our students complete their work independently at the desk, they return to the carpet if that's what you have them do in the classroom, or perhaps you're teaching virtually and you have them return from breakout rooms. You get them to share either something that they learned from the peer review process, or you get them to read their entire revised essay. Then for homework, this is the last lesson of this genre of writing. You're going to ask them to publish that essay. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining me for another lesson at the Language Arts Gallery. This was an exciting genre of writing to teach, one of my favorite genres to teach. Please remember to subscribe to my channel so you get all of my academic writing and creative writing materials. And next week, I'm going to be back with a new genre of writing for young learners. I'll see you then.